What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. Okay, so following up to Decimation, what I want to do here is I want to cover Wolverine origins and endings, because I think this is going to give you guys a pretty good idea of the direction that Marvel was going in with regards to the different characters and teams and stuff like that. So this focuses almost entirely on Wolverine. It involves Bucky Barnes, Captain America, so on and so forth, but this is an example of where Marvel was kind of going back to the drawing board with characters, because by this point, we're at the tail end of Wolverine Volume 3, and what this story does is it actually sets the stage for the start of Daniel Way's Wolverine origins, which was really kind of cool. It involved Romulus, it involved the introduction of Dakin, and involved all kinds of really cool things. But what this does is it kind of follows up to Wolverine regaining his memories, because remember, at the end of House of M, Wolverine remembers everything about his past. And so this is a little ambiguous in terms of how it starts, because it initially just kind of starts with a conversation between Wolverine and Emma Frost over the phone. But this was the most logical course of action, because with Wolverine regaining his memories, now we had a lot of questions. And that's one of the things that he says here, is that for him, regaining his memories, he thought would be like an answer to all of his life's problems. But all it's done is open up more questions in terms of what's been happening so far. And so what happens is his journey has basically taken him to Tokyo, Japan. And the reason why is because he's basically tracking down the Prime Minister of Japan. Now, on the surface, he's not intending to find the Prime Minister. What he's intending to do is find the captain of the Prime Minister's personal security detail, the Silver Samurai. Now, the Silver Samurai is the son of Shinjin Yoshida, I think it is. That's part of Clan Yoshida. It's one of these mini clans that existed in Japan for quite some time that was involved in criminal activities. But the Silver Samurai served a pretty significant history in the realm of Marvel Comics. Not really popular. The Silver Samurai was like never part of the Avengers or anything like that, but he was part of like the Japanese team, Big Hero 6, different things like that. And by the way, that was kind of an interesting thing. What Disney did with Big Hero 6 was borrow the name from Marvel Comics, just because of the fact that I wouldn't really go see a movie about Big Hero 6 in Marvel Comics, but it was kind of a cool situation. But Big Hero 6 was really like a Japanese oriented team. It was based with like I want to say Sunfire, Silver Samurai, a handful of small-time characters, and it was kind of interesting. But the reason why Wolverine is here is to basically question Silver Samurai, just because of how far back his knowledge in Japanese history goes, the various ties that he has through his aspects, or through being the son of Clan Yoshida. It makes a really interesting situation, because Wolverine's basically trying to retrace his steps. Now, what he's doing is basically tracking a guy down, and who that person is, we'll find out. But what we end up doing is we basically switch over to Dum Dum Dugan, along with Captain America, Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, and Iron Man. The reason why is because they're panicking at the moment. Remember, Wolverine is a one-man army. I mean, if you want to wipe out a government, you send in Wolverine. Like, we saw that with Enemy of the State, right? I mean, when Wolverine was brainwashed by the Hand and Hydra, he ended up going through and fighting off against a multitude of superheroes. Now, the What If story that I covered, where he kills the entire Marvel Universe, saw the fruition of that, where every single time superheroes tried to stop them, he killed them. And it got to the point where he killed them all. Eventually, Kitty Pryde had to kill Wolverine by phasing her hand through his head and basically destroying his brain. She lost her hand in the process. But by the time that happened, he'd killed Captain America, he had killed Iron Man, he killed most everybody at S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, he killed every single person that tried to track him down. So it was a really cool situation. And that's what Emma Frost says. Emma Frost says, you know, we're S.H.I.E.L.D., where everybody wants to know what Wolverine was doing, why he went after a head of state, you know, or at least it was believed to be the Prime Minister of Japan. The question they have is, why is he doing this? And Emma Frost says, because he's regained all of his memories. And this sends the world into absolute panic, or at least it sends S.H.I.E.L.D. into absolute panic. And the reason why is because now Wolverine remembers all those abuses. Wolverine remembers all the times that he's been tortured. He remembers all the times that he's been used and his memory's been altered so he would forget. I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. is just kind of in a position now where they're just like, oh my God. Because now there's no telling what he'll do. With the memories of Wolverine, while Logan himself is kind of a mishmash, the different people in S.H.I.E.L.D., Dum Dum Dugan, of course, the one-time friend of Nick Fury, or at least fighting alongside Nick Fury, that eventually, you know, took the Infinity Formula to keep him young, as part of S.H.I.E.L.D., they were able to consolidate all these different pieces of Wolverine's life and kind of bring them together to figure out what direction his life would actually take him. But even then, a lot of things were left ambiguous. And so between this fight with Wolverine and with Silver Samurai, what ends up happening is the journey basically takes him, or at least it leaves him injured to the point that he kind of makes his way aboard a ship, at least aboard a ferry of sorts, and then just kind of passes out from the experience. But what it does is it allows Daniel Way to kind of go back a little bit, focus on some of these memories that Wolverine's having about a wife that appears to be pregnant, so on and so forth. But it creates kind of a funny situation because there was a person that apparently killed his wife, and we don't know who that person is. The question being, who was it that killed his wife Itsu, which is the person he's presumably tracking down. Now, of course, once he comes to, what this does is it leads him to Canada's Department K. Now, this is when Daniel Way begins the process of going back and retconning a bunch of things. We talked about this before in our video on the origin of Wolverine's adamantium, where we talked about how, the adamantium bonding process was done, that he had his whole memories based on that. What Daniel Way is going to do is he's basically going to go through here and he's going to begin changing things up. He's going to begin altering the history a little bit. And the way that he does this is by showing that Wolverine's time at the facility was not exactly what he expected it to be, where he believed there was, Carol Hines, Dr. Cornelius, all these different people, where he believed that they may have been there, where he was lashing out and he was going through and he was tearing things up. What he's coming to realize is that his memories were not exactly like that. That his memories were not exactly in the same capacity, where he believed that he had escaped the containment unit, where he believed that he had gone through, killed all these different members as part of Canada's Department K and the whole Weapon X project, that instead it wasn't just him. That in all reality, he had help escaping the Weapon X facility. Somebody engineered his escape. Somebody went through and they basically let down the security precautions so that Wolverine would escape in an animalistic state, kill everybody, and then get away. And that's what Wolverine himself says. He says in his mind, the way that his memories were before they were restored during the events of House of M, that he was able to make his escape from the Weapon X facility because the people who were running it just got careless. That they considered him to be an animal, but he still had thinking ability. He just waited for a moment when they were at their weakest, when they were at their most careless, and then engineered his own escape, basically got away. That is not actually what happened. Now, in terms of who it was that engineered his escape, we'll basically get to that here in a second. But what ends up happening is that as he's making his way through this Weapon X facility, he basically contacts Captain America. And when he gets a hold of Steve Rogers, Steve's like, hey man, you got to come back in. They literally try to corral him back. And Wolverine says, no, I've got stuff to do. But one of the people that I'm looking for is your old friend, Bucky Barnes. And so what this does is this transitions over to Belgrade, Serbia. At least I think it's how you pronounce it, Belgrade. I'm not really sure, but it transitions over to Serbia where Wolverine is trying to track down Bucky Barnes. Now, with regards to Bucky, you got to keep in mind, this is that whole point where he's still underground. Like he's still operating hidden away from the world. Because remember, following the return of Bucky Barnes in Marvel Comics during Ed Brubaker's Captain America Volume 5, that Bucky Barnes had basically had his memories restored by Steve Rogers, and then Bucky Barnes had just kind of taken off. That was really kind of like the magnum opus of that whole run of Ed Brubaker. The whole idea was bring Bucky Barnes back. He doesn't know who he was. He's still operating as the Winter Soldier. Have Captain America use the Cosmic Cube. Bucky Barnes' memories are restored, and then he just kind of goes back to recollect himself. So it was very similar to what you guys saw in Captain America the Winter Soldier when Bucky saves Steve Rogers and then just kind of roams off and tries to go understand and try to piece his life back together. That's really what was happening here. Now, what Wolverine did when he had left Canada, when he had left Canada's Department K, is he had basically put the word out that he's looking for Bucky Barnes. Now, here's how things work when it comes to Marvel Comics with regards to this whole criminal underworld. There are all kinds of contacts that are all sorts of resources. It's really just like this giant underground. Now, a lot of it has its roots in Madripoor, which is basically this city where all the criminals hang out, and even S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't go there. But when someone says, I'm looking for a person, word will get back to them. People will whisper, birds will talk, and they'll say, hey, like somebody's looking for you. They're trying to track you down. And so by the time that Wolverine got to Serbia, where he discovered that Bucky Barnes was hanging out, Bucky Barnes was lying in wait. Now, when he gets in, of course, he's basically being shot at by somebody on a roof. And when he gets in, he basically walks into an old news facility, into an old, newspaper facility. And the reason why this is so significant is because this goes to the intelligence of Bucky Barnes. It shows us how smart he is. And that's one of the great things about his character. When Bucky Barnes was part of the old Captain America stories back in the 1940s, the 1950s, up until the point where Captain America was basically killed off and Bucky Barnes was gone, when he was brought back and Ed Brubaker basically retconned his history and said that Bucky Barnes wasn't just like a 1940s, sidekick, like, yeah, I love you, Captain America, that he was actually, he was trained to be an assassin. That the reason why Bucky Barnes was paired with Captain America is because Bucky was willing to engage in torture. He was willing to engage in murder if it meant that his mission would be achieved. He was willing to do the things that Captain America wouldn't do. And Captain America tolerated that because they were in World War II, because there were some things that were necessary in order to ensure the Axis didn't succeed. And so it was really just kind of like the lesser of two evils. But once Bucky Barnes' time had basically come to an end, once the explosion that led to the presumed death of Captain America when he was frozen in ice, once Bucky Barnes was taken by the Russians and transformed into the Winter Soldier, well then at that point he just kind of became an assassin. Like, that's all he did. He just went went around killing individuals, carrying out all kinds of different missions. But what that did is it honed his skills as an assassin. It made him more capable. He had a mission, and it was complete this mission, do whatever you have to do, and he would have to learn to adapt. With regards to Wolverine, Wolverine's senses are some of the best in Marvel Comics. His sense of smell, his sense of sound, his ability to see, so on and so forth, are some of the best in Marvel Comics. Bucky Barnes leading Wolverine into a printing facility, into a newspaper facility, is done for the purpose of Bucky Barnes covering himself in ink. And so basically, Wolverine's senses cannot detect him. He wouldn't be able to smell him. He wouldn't be able to track him down. He would just have to rely on his sense of sight. Now, this is genius because it's almost like that instance from the movie Predator when Arnold Schwarzenegger covered himself in mud so the Predator couldn't see him because the Predator wouldn't be able to see through the mud to detect body heat. That's basically what's happening. Bucky Barnes hides himself from the senses of Wolverine. So it's so cool because it's basically him just drawing on all this experience as an assassin. That's one of the reasons why I love Bucky so much. In the end, Bucky's able to get the upper hand on Wolverine, and the woman that was on the roof that was shooting kind of shoots Wolverine from behind and effectively kills him. And so the result is that Wolverine's more or less dead, or at least it seems like he is. Now, of course, the cool thing about this is that there's an exchange between Bucky and this woman that he hired. And this woman says, you know, I'm staying here until I get paid. Bucky says, go to this location, get an ATM card, take money out of this old slush fund from the KGB, and then get out of here. Like, just go into hiding, never allow anyone to see you. Now, when the question is asked why it is Wolverine had come after Bucky Barnes in the first place, Bucky says, he came after me because I killed his wife and his unborn child. Now, this is a huge retcon in the realm of Marvel Comics that Bucky Barnes basically killed the wife and the unborn child of Wolverine, because what this does is it goes to the heart of the fact that Bucky Barnes had so many things that he didn't, or he did so many things that he wasn't aware of. Because remember, when he was the Winter Soldier, he would go on a mission, he would be brainwashed, his memories wouldn't really be wiped away so much as they were replaced, and then he would go on and complete another mission. He was kept constantly in a docile state, and while he is still recovering a lot of his own memories, this particular memory of being involved in the death of Wolverine's wife is something that's come back to him. And so that's why he realizes that's why Wolverine's there. Now from here, we transition to a place called Jasmine Falls, and we actually jump back to the past to this memory of Wolverine. And what had happened is over the course of his life, following his experience as part of Canada's Department K, following, you know, his whole time being a killer, kind of being this mindless animal, that he had traveled to Jasmine Falls for the purpose of trying to basically find solace. And he comes across a man by the name of Bando Saburo. And this is a guy who is essentially kind of like this instructor, or this man who's at peace with himself. But Jasmine Falls is basically where assassins go in order to find inner peace. And that's the whole basis behind this. That's what Saburo says, that at this location, this is where men who were previously killers go to cast off who they were before and become better men. And that's why Wolverine is here. Wolverine's in Jasmine Falls to cast aside that dark nature of himself and to be a better man. Now, the cool thing is that Master Saburo goes to him and says, this plot of land will be your home. And when Wolverine goes to lay down to basically sleep, Saburo says, you're not an animal, you're a man. This will be your home when you build it. And that's the cool thing about this, is because it's very Doctor Strange-esque in terms of Stephen Strange more or less tearing down the barriers of his own mind. It is Wolverine tearing down the barriers of who he was to reveal who he can truly become. And it's really cool because with each brick that he builds, with each, you know, piece of wood that he constructs to make his home, he's building himself up to be a better person. Along the way, he falls in love with Itsu, and the two of them basically become pregnant. They bear a child. Now, the cool thing about this is that this also initiates a ceremony. When Itsu is revealed to be with child, Wolverine basically celebrates with Master Saburo. Master Saburo says, this is a time of celebration. This is you becoming a better man because now you have something to live for. And that was really the significance of Wolverine's wife being pregnant. That's why it was so big for him, is because now he had someone to live for. Now he had a reason to be a role model. And that's one of the reasons why this whole Wolverine dichotomy works so well, is because for us as people, for you and me, right? Like if we have a goal to aspire towards, if we say, you know, well, I'm having a son, I want to be a better man, then that's what you become. That's one of the reasons why they say motherhood is when girls, or when women stop being girls and they become women. They step into motherhood, they begin to realize that they have a responsibility to a life beyond their own. And in turn, they step into that role and become better people. And that's what Wolverine was doing. He was trying to become a better human being. Now, the issue is that in the midst of this celebration, the celebration is designed to serve a couple purposes. The first, it's to literally just be a celebration. It's to say, yeah, man, like Wolverine's wife is preggers. But the other half is to also show what Wolverine's become, to show that he's left his animal instincts behind, that he's left his darker nature behind. The problem is that in the midst of this whole dance, his animal instincts take over temporarily, and in doing so, his claws come out and he accidentally injures one of the guys that he's kind of dancing alongside or fighting alongside. And the result is that he's basically failed this test of him leaving his darkness behind. Now, what this also does is this coincides with an explosion out in the mountains. And this is when Saburo reveals the identity of a guy named Muramasa. And so this ties into that whole origin of the Muramasa blade. Those of you guys who are intrigued by that element of Wolverine's origin, how to kill Wolverine, those of you guys who are intrigued by that whole Muramasa blade concept, this is where we basically learned about this, Wolverine origins and endings. And so what Saburo does is he basically gives this rundown on Muramasa, right? Where Saburo says that he exists as a man that's designed to basically cleanse men's souls, to help them become better people, to help them remove the stench of past deeds and lay the foundation for them to become better than what they've been. That Muramasa is the opposite. That Muramasa is basically a bad guy. Muramasa feeds on the darkness of men's souls by putting that darkness into weapons forged by Muramasa, which in turn those men use to carry out evil deeds. And so with Logan kind of taking time to himself and on the mountainside and sort of realizing that he had basically failed this test in the sense that he had lashed out accidentally during this dance, that he wasn't quite at peace enough with himself to raise his own son, that he had gone back to see Itsu, but when he got back there, that she was dead, of course, having been killed by Bucky Barnes. And so what this does is jump back to the modern day. And this is the conversation that he has with Bucky. Bucky basically says, look, my mission at the time was to lure you out. My mission was to kill Itsu and to get you to follow me and then lead you to Madripoor. Now, the reason why this was done leads into the introduction of a character named Romulus. And that goes into the whole, Daniel Way Wolverine origins thing. And that's him basically retconning the entire origin of the Weapon X project. It wasn't John Sublime or anything as crazy as that. That instead it was Romulus running the whole thing. What Bucky Barnes says is, where you were supposed to follow me, instead you didn't. That you traveled up the side of the mountain and you went to go see Muramasa. And that's what happens here, is Wolverine went to go meet Muramasa and he told Muramasa, I want a weapon, I want a blade that will kill them all. And so Muramasa says, fine, I will help you. I will take a fraction of your soul. I will take out the darkest elements of it and I will put it in this weapon. The issue is, he says, it'll take me years to do this. It'll take me years to make it happen. What ends up happening here is Wolverine's basically kicked off the side of the mountain in no uncertain terms, and he's more or less just sort of left out there. And Muramasa's argument is, if Wolverine is able to survive however long it is that he's out there, if he's able to survive the rest of his life, then in the next few years, he will come to me and he will look for this weapon. And so what this does is it kind of wraps back around with this conversation between Wolverine and Bucky Barnes. And so, of course, Wolverine says, hey, look, you and me aren't done, but the reason why he doesn't kill him is because, keep in mind, all these things that Bucky Barnes did prior to really his return, and when Captain America used the cosmic cube on him, all those things were done without Bucky intending to do it. He was basically being used. And Wolverine understands where it is that Bucky's coming from, because in terms of how their minds work, their skewed memories, the fact that they don't remember everything about their lives the way they actually were, that they share that concept. They share that entire standard. Now, Wolverine will come back for Bucky Barnes eventually, but in the meantime, he basically just sort of dumps a whole bunch of information on Bucky Barnes with regards to the past deeds that he'd done. Now, I don't really know what it is that he said, and as far as I know, Bucky, I don't think had an origin story or had a solo series at the time, so I don't really know what it is that ends up dropping here. But what Wolverine does is he basically throws on, a fake identity, and he basically takes back off to Jasmine Falls again. And when he gets there, he comes back into contact with Muramasa, and Muramasa says, I finished crafting this sword. I finished crafting the Muramasa blade. This blade will give you the tool to kill anyone that you come across. Wield it like an angry god. So again, this sets the stage for Wolverine Origin by Daniel Way. This sets the stage for that great big huge, I don't remember how long it was, 30, 40, 50 issues long. It sets the stage for that whole great big huge story arc with the introduction of the Muramasa blade itself. So with that being said, guys, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this, because I always thought the Muramasa blade was really cool. I mean, it's the one weapon that will shut off the healing factor of Wolverine temporarily. I mean, it's almost the one guaranteed way to kill him. So it's always kind of been a cool thing for me. But yeah, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end, and I will catch you all later. Peace.